27 cars took the start of the 2025 Bathurst 1000. 7 of them had a rookie in the seat. 0 of them had an American. Think about that. We've got a sport in the United States that produces drivers who race door handle to door handle at 200 miles an hour at Talladega, 3 wide in the dark on a Sunday afternoon. And these are supposedly the bravest steering wheel operators on the planet. And yet you mentioned Mount Panorama, 6.2 kilometers of public road with a 174-meter vertical elevation change and concrete on both sides, and suddenly everybody's calendar gets tragically, mysteriously full. Here's what I want you to sit with. It is not the walls, it's not the cliff. There is a specific mechanical component bolted into the back of every Gen 3 supercar that makes that racetrack functionally undrivable for a bloke who spent 20 years in a cup car. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why the best road racer in NASCAR right now came from Australia and not the other way around. Let's kill the lazy take first. Bathurst is scary because it's narrow. Sure, every commentator says it, it's also useless information. The actual problem is that Mount Panorama is 2 completely different racetracks welded together, and they demand 2 opposite driving styles from the same car in the same 2-minute 4-second lap. Section 1, the top of the mountain, from Griffin's Bend up through the cutting, across Skyline into the Dipper. This is where the road falls out from underneath you. You're cresting at 862 meters above sea level. The car goes light, and then the pavement drops away at a gradient steep enough that the nose of the car is aimed at the scenery rather than the corner. The Dipper compresses you into the ground, then unloads you mid-corner while you're already turning. You're asking a 1,335-kilogram tin top to change direction at the exact moment the tires are being told they weigh nothing. Section 2, Conrod Straight, nearly 2 kilometers of flat-out, roughly 300 kilometers per hour, and then the chase. A braking zone that isn't flat, isn't straight, and doesn't have a runoff area worth mentioning. You're braking downhill on camber that's actively working against you into a corner you can't see the exit of. So the setup fight is brutal. You need a soft, compliant car to survive the mountain. You need a stiff, planted car to survive the chase. You get one setup for both, and the compromise is what kills people's weekends. Now compare the tool. The NASCAR next-gen car, 3,200 pounds minimum without driver or fuel, 670 horsepower, independent rear suspension, 18-inch wheels, 5-speed X-Track sequential in the back. On paper, it's closer to a supercar than any cup car in history. In practice, the next-gen's steering has been the single most complained about component of the entire platform since the 2021 road course tests. Drivers described it as numb. You turn the wheel and the information about what the front tires are doing arrives late or filtered or not at all. At Sonoma, that's an annoyance. At the Dipper, delayed information is how you end up in the fence, but the steering isn't even the scariest part. Wait until I show you what's bolted into the rear axle. Quick thing. If you're the kind of person who already knew that a spool and a locked diff aren't quite the same argument, and you've got opinions about brake bias distribution that you can't share at family dinners, you're in the right place. This channel is built for the 1% who want the engineering, not the highlight reel. Hit subscribe and join the Decoded crew. It's genuinely the smartest racing comment section on this platform, and I read all of it. Right. The rear axle. X-Track builds the P1293 transaxle for the Gen 3 Supercar. Go read their own spec sheet. It says, and I quote, fixed axle spool output as standard. A spool. There is no differential. Both rear wheels are welded together in terms of speed. Turn the steering wheel and the inside rear tire is physically forced to travel the same distance as the outside rear, which it cannot do, so it scrubs. It howls, and it tries to push the whole car straight ahead into the fence at the exit of every slow corner. That is a design choice. Supercars have raced a locked rear for decades, and they kept it in Gen 3 on purpose. It's what gives the category that violent, sideways, tire-destroying character. Now here's Shane Van Gisbergen, three-time Supercars champion, eight-time NASCAR Cup winner, most recently Sonoma in June, describing the transition on Kevin Harvick's podcast. His words, "They're similar on paper, but the way they drive, I think the locked-diff is the biggest difference. Having an open diff here makes a big difference." Read that in reverse. An American driver going the other way spends their entire career learning to trust a car that rotates on throttle. Then they get in a supercar where throttle at Forrest elbow doesn't rotate. It locks the car and sends it toward the wall on the outside of the fastest downhill corner on the circuit. Forrest elbow is where you commit blind downhill with a spool trying to straighten you out, and SVG isn't done. He also said the supercar's technique was, quote, so unique with the heel and toe and running all the rear brake you could. It's a bit opposite in this car. You run as much front as you can. Rear brake bias. In a car with a locked rear axle, that is a knife edge that takes years to learn, and there's one more layer to it that most people get completely wrong. The pedal box. The next-gen X-Track is clutchless on the way up. No blip, no lift, just pull it. Coming down, the box does a huge amount of the work for you. SVG's blunt assessment of left foot braking in a Cup car. People make a big deal out of the right foot braking, but it really does nothing in this car. Now the Gen 3. Downshifts want clutch and throttle blip, proper heel and toe, right foot rolled across two pedals while your left foot works the clutch at 300 kilometers per hour downhill into the chase. When supercars floated paddle shift for Gen 3, the drivers pushed back. The stated objection was that paddles would make the cars too easy. That is the culture in one sentence. So you're asking a Cup regular to relearn footwork, relearn brake bias, relearn diff behavior, and relearn a circuit that punishes mistakes with a hospital visit, all in about 4 practice sessions, which brings us to the excuse that gets offered publicly. The calendar. Kyle Larson on the Stacking Pennies podcast asked about a dream cross category schedule. A V8 supercar would be kind of cool. Getting to do Bathurst would be neat, but there's just conflicts. There's not enough days in the year. There's big races on the same weekends. He's not lying. Bathurst 2026 runs October 8th to 11th. The NASCAR Cup Series is at the Charlotte Roval on October 11th, playoff elimination territory. There is no version of that weekend where a contracted Cup driver flies to New South Wales. But is the calendar the real reason or the convenient one? Because look at what actually happened when the door opened. In November 2025, Austin Cindric, Daytona 500 winner, Penske driver, genuinely respected road racer, became the first active Cup driver to take a supercar's wild card in a Tickford Mustang at the Adelaide Grand Final. Adelaide, a flat street circuit, not the mountain. He finished 23rd out of 25 in a wet opening sprint on the lead lap, clean, no drama. His own verdict afterwards, mildly satisfied. Honestly, credit to him. He turned up, took the punishment, and didn't bin it. Cam Waters and the old heads Scaife, Tander all said the right things about his pace, but hold that result against the other direction. SVG turned up at Chicago in 2023, having never sat in a Cup car and won on debut. Nobody has come close to reversing it. Will Brown and Cam Waters have raced Cup at Chicago and Sonoma. Brock Feeney's had a crack. The traffic is overwhelmingly one way, and it's one way for a reason. Joey Logano's a useful case, 3-time champion, arguably the shrewdest racecraft brain in the garage, and precisely zero incentive to fly 15,000 kilometers to finish 20th in a category where a 22-year-old Super 2 graduate will outqualify him. The downside is enormous. The upside is a nice photo. That's not cowardice. That's arithmetic. And it's why every NASCAR star to Bathurst rumor dies at the same place Chevrolet has openly floated, putting a NASCAR name in an Adelaide wildcard for 2026. And notice the word nobody's using in those conversations, Bathurst. So here's the honest conclusion. It isn't fear of the mountain, it's that Bathurst is the single hardest place on earth to look competent in a car you've never driven. In a category where the locals have 15 years of laps and a spool diff technique that doesn't transfer from anything else on the planet, Bathurst doesn't reward talent, it rewards specific talent. Show up with generic greatness, and the mountain will humiliate you in front of 200,000 people. Which leaves one question. There is exactly one American with the versatility, the sprint car control, and the sheer neck to survive a spool diff over Skyline, and I reckon most of you are going to name the wrong bloke. So tell me in the comments, who's your one NASCAR driver with the guts to tackle the mountain? Put a name down. I'll tell you why you're wrong.